Hi, Tayo.
Hello, how you doing, Tony?
I'm good. Thank you for agreeing to come on the Challenging University podcast. I'm very excited to have you on.
Likewise, good to be here. Thank you, I appreciate it.
So, I know a little bit about you, but the listeners don't. So, for the listeners today and the listeners to come, could you please share your full name and what it is that you do today?
Awesome. So yeah, my name is Tayo Adesina. I run a social enterprise called Gxng, and our job, our role is to be the creative outlet for underrepresented young people, 16 to 25, and we help transform their peer-led conversations into streetwear clothing. And by doing that, we're helping them transition from formal education into the working world. We're giving them all of the soft skills that they need ultimately to progress in life.
Amazing. This is why I was so glad to have you on. Um, so, let's go back to before you had your own organization. Let's
Mm,
go back to secondary school. So, can you
okay.
tell me what your memories are of that time?
Do you know what? Interestingly, secondary school was the favorite time, I guess, of my adolescence and my childhood. A lot of my memories of secondary school, if I'm completely honest, is me misbehaving, pushing boundaries, um, making life a little bit difficult for the teachers around me. And really and truly, it was building friendships and bonds that honestly felt like they would last a lifetime. And that's what secondary school was for me. I'll be honest, it wasn't the excitement of the learning and the education at the time. It was more about building those relationships. And funny enough, that stayed true to who I am till today. So yeah, some of my early memories.
And whereabouts in the country did you go to school?
Great question. So I lived in London for the first 10, 11 years. And then family, we moved to Kent. So we moved about an hour away, an area called Medway. So I was pretty fortunate. I got the opportunity in my 11 plus. I managed to pass scraping by a barrel of the teeth. I mean, I think I passed by like 20 points or something like that.
Yeah, nice.
And then ended up going to a grammar school. I ended up going to a grammar school in Kent. And that's where I met all of the friends that I've pretty much maintained till this day. And through secondary school, I remember getting my first rejections by a girl. I remember like, literally like that era, that time of my life was phenomenal.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong, it had its challenges. I think Kent is probably where I experienced my real understanding of racism. I mean, at the
right,
time that we moved, we were one of the few black families in the area. And I
right.
mean, for my school at the time, I probably was one of three, maybe four black kids in the entire school. So
Wow.
as exciting and as an amazing experience wasn't, and I loved it, it definitely came with its challenges. It wasn't without them, that's for sure.
Yeah, and how was it as you came to the end of that experience and you were thinking
Mm.
about what was to come? What was the expectation on you? Because you're at a grammar school.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what? I'll be honest. Culturally, the expectation was always that I went to university.
Mhm.
The expectation was you go through formal education, you go as far as you can, you go into higher education. That was the tone in my household.
Yeah.
So that was something that I guess was beaten into me from early. Whether I felt like it was what I wanted or not, it was definitely drummed in, right? It was definitely the trajectory that I was told that I needed to follow. And
Okay.
that's a cultural aspect. That's definitely a part of it for me. But if I'm really honest, I think what changed my perspective whilst I was at school was one particular teacher. So again, I had a bit of a rougher background in school. I definitely was one of the more misbehaved children. Hence probably why I advocate so much for those who are challenged in schools right now and sometimes on that trajectory to exclusion. I
Hmm.
mean, I'd been on those kind of performance improvement plans as a kid, and it was one
Oh,
particular teaching assistant
yeah,
called Nicola Sandy, and I
yeah.
think we spoke maybe a couple of years ago via messaging. And I remember her to this day because she was one of the few who genuinely just
Mm,
believed in me.
yeah,
She poured into me as a young kid and was like, look, you can achieve great things if
yeah.
you buckle up. And sadly, every end of year kind of teacher parents conference, my feedback was always, Tyre would be great if he didn't stop distracting people and if he applied himself. That was my consistent messaging whilst I was actually at school.
Yeah. And did they actually use performance improvement plans? Did they?
Yeah, so I don't know if they called it a pip. I don't know if that was the exact
Okay.
same phrase, but I definitely had a yellow. It was like three tiers, like a green book, a yellow book, and a red book. The red book was the
Yeah,
worst. It
yeah,
was
yeah,
definitely the worst.
yeah.
And yeah, I've been through suspension. I've been suspended before. I'll be honest, it was for the most ridiculous thing. And and when I reflect on it now, I think of
Mm.
how far we've progressed as a society. One of the things I got suspended for was my hairstyle at the time. Now,
Oh.
this was a really interesting one because when I talk to some of the schools that we
Mm.
work with, and I think about what it means to be a black student in the UK, what it means to be a black student in Britain, some of the
Yeah.
rules that apply to me didn't seem to apply to my peers. So there isn't
Yeah.
much I could do with my hair. I mean, I'm pretty much bald now, but there wasn't much I could do with my hair as a kid. But I
Yeah.
wanted to have a mohawk and a little
Yeah.
tiny, I mean, we're talking like an inch and a half of hair that would just sit in the middle of my head. As
Yeah.
ridiculous I think it is now, at the time, that was something worthy of me being suspended for. Um, yeah, and I'd see my peers, they could pretty much style their hair and gel it and slick it and
Yeah.
do the things they wanted to do with it. And at the time, me wanting to try and relate and do what I felt was cool was a
Yeah.
cause for punishment. So school had its
Mm.
ups and downs, to say the least, to say the least.
And so something that
Mm.
well, we're going to talk about this. So you did go on to uni.
Yeah, I did.
So I'm intrigued now because the expectation from your family was this is what you want, but at school you were having a bit of a rough ride. So how did that change? What happened?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I do echo the support of Nicholas Sandy being that one teaching assistant at the time who genuinely just poured into me and encouraged me as a student. And I think we often take for granted how much influence teachers have, external
Yeah,
organizations have,
yeah,
partner organizations like ourselves have on the trajectory of a young person. And actually, for me, I got to grips of owning my journey in terms of actually taking my education serious because I had someone who told me that I could achieve great things if I did. And
yeah,
that started to show when I decided, all right, cool, I'm going to focus. I'm going to do my GCSEs and do a great job. And then I'm going to go and do sixth form and get my A levels. And I walked out with 8 AB, even though my predicted grades were nowhere near that, right? So
yeah,
it for me and my journey, it goes to show how much actually others, older, experienced people can pour into you. They can either help shape you to do great things, or unfortunately, their words can be the damaging things that hold you back sometimes.
yeah. It's quite. I think that is really powerful because similarly, an interesting time at secondary school. But you do remember, and it may not be until a bit later, but you do remember
Mm,
the teachers who said, you really have got a talent here if you would
100%,
only believe in yourself.
100%, 100%.
Um, what did you study at A level?
So I did English literature,
Hmm.
uh, business management, and ICT, or business
Okay.
studies and ICT. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
a mix and mash
Hmm.
of things to study. I think there was a natural interest in English literature. My dad got me into reading from a
Yeah.
young age. So I read books. I enjoyed reading. That then dropped off in my teenage years, but I did enjoy
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah.
And then yeah, business and IT was a natural fit for me. I enjoyed all concepts of business at the time.
Yeah.
And I guess IT was exciting because it was the only class you got to use a computer in. So that
Yeah.
was the natural, I want to do that. Yeah,
My kids say now it's like when it's hot weather, they're like, you want to be in the ICT suite because they've got aircon.
there
So
you go. That's the good
yeah,
stuff.
all the good stuff is in the IT suite.
100%.
Um, so what was your university experience like?
How would I describe my university? I mean, look, in truth, university was a fun place. You get that next level of independence as a young person, where you don't feel tied necessarily to your parents. You get the experience of living outside of home. So university was fun, independence, and actually getting to step into making my own real decisions for myself. Now, I don't say that to me. My parents repressed me in any way. They absolutely let me be my own adult, even as I was in the house. But I think
Mm,
the next level of university is where you truthfully you kind of really exercise your moral compass and what you do and don't believe in. And I guess some of the things you're taught at home, you actually then follow through when you're out on your own, all right? And you
yeah,
have the opportunity to be someone of integrity or someone who isn't. And I guess university gave me that platform really to
yeah,
discover the things that I do care about.
yeah. Wow, that's quite profound. It's like exercise your moral compass.
I don't know where
Yeah.
it comes from.
um, okay, right. You go from uni to not
Mm.
straight to trash gang. No,
No, no, no,
no.
no, not quite. Life took a traditional pathway, I guess, because of the things I
Hmm.
was exposed to at university. I went down the route of then going into management consulting straight from university.
Yeah.
In truth, I went to university like most young people go to university, they weren't getting a job straight after uni, right? There was this
Right.
big struggle. It's like, oh, you've done university, nobody's actually hiring me, but I've done all
Yeah.
this work and I paid all this money. Why am I not getting a job?
Yeah.
So I then decided to stay for one more year and I actually did a master's degree in the same thing, information management for business is what I studied at UCL.
Ah, yeah.
And truthfully, I only stayed because I didn't have a job lined up. That was just
Right.
the reality of where I was at the time.
Yeah.
And then, yes, I then found or realized what management consulting was. And then I went into being a management consultant.
Mhm.
And I spent the last 4 or 5 years as a management consultant full time.
Okay. Now, I've heard that kind of role described as almost like a doctor for a business. That's how someone described it to me. What do you think?
I like their optimism. It's definitely a flavor of that. And funny enough, I saw quite a few Instagram reels mocking what a management consultant is, which
Ah,
made me laugh. Relatable, obviously not true because management consultants do add value.
yeah.
But yeah, as a job, we are going in and ultimately trying to diagnose some of the key problems within an organization and also trying to find a solution to them. Really and truly, bottom line, we're trying to help the profitability, the finances of an organization. It always comes down to, in some way, shape, or form, whether you're impacting culture, whether you're
Mhm.
impacting team structure, it will come down to the bottom line and costing at the end of the day in which you're trying to help an organization.
Okay. So, what's taken you from management consulting to setting up Trash Gang? Need to
Yeah,
know.
it seems like such a wild leap, right? No connection whatsoever. To be honest, it's personal experience in life. So during my university period, in my final year of my master's, actually, I received a call from my mum that my best friend of 10 years was actually in hospital and had attempted to commit suicide.
Right.
Um, and when I say my best friend, like I said, secondary school was my favorite memories, right? And that was
Mm.
the best friend, David, that I spent all of my time with. He taught me how to ski. He taught me how to ride my first motorbike. Taught me how to play the drums. I mean, a lot of
Wow.
the things I did, yeah, he did it all, and I learned it all from him.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be proud of the way he taught me how to ski because he just took me to the top of a cliff and just said, "Yeah, just go down it." And that was literally how I learned with him. Um,
Wow.
but sadly, as close as I was to him and we did everything together, there was a part of his life that he obviously didn't share, to the point that he was willing to take his own life. And
Wow.
part of that mission and what drives me to create Trash Gang is this realization that social isolation exists. And I
Mm.
look at the story and the life that I had with my best friend David at the time.
Mm.
All of us as a friendship group went to university except for him. He was the only one that stayed back home at Kent.
Right.
And there was a natural barrier, whether we wanted it or not, there was a natural barrier because we're now making new friendships at university. We don't have the ability to just catch up with each other on a daily basis like we
Yeah.
used to. So yeah, there was a burning passion and desire within me to create safe spaces for young people, to be
Yeah.
real, to be authentic about what they're actually going through and equipping them with the skills that they need to progress in life. I've seen how a lack of social isolation impacts young people. I want to be
Yeah.
part of the solution to that.
And how long has Trash Gang been going for?
So as an organization, we've existed for about 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
I mean, truth be told, as a young boy, as I guess I was when I set it up, I didn't know much about business structures outside of an LTD. So we started as an LTD, and
Yeah.
very quickly I realized actually I'm here for the community. What I want this organization to be is to
Yeah.
live and breathe for the community. So we transitioned to a social enterprise. We're now a CIC as an organization, and
Yeah.
we're actively on our mission to help support our community of young people.
And how do you think your experiences in the corporate world have helped to inform how you run the
Mm.
organization, how you bring people in?
I love that. I genuinely believe everything happens for a reason.
Mm.
And I quite strongly see how the skills that I've learned and leveraged through management consulting has actually transferred into me running an organization. I think one of the key skills you learn as a consultant is your ability to learn things very, very quickly. You're stepping
Yeah.
into a new organization, sometimes on a monthly basis, and you have to get up to speed super fast. And I think the natural ability to learn quickly and have a desire to learn something has just followed me through to entrepreneurship and setting up an organization where I don't have all the skills, but I have to learn pretty quickly, so that
Yeah.
I can keep this organization growing and moving in the right direction.
And what do your former colleagues and
Mm.
family and people, what did they think about you going from this? I mean, you did the thing, You did
Yeah.
the, I went to uni and then I got a master's and then I went to a
Yeah.
big consulting firm. I mean, it's a lot to people
Yeah.
to move on from.
Yeah,
If some people might say
absolutely.
walk away from, but
Yeah,
what
yeah, yeah. To be honest, the biggest challenge was probably my own mindset actually towards making that move. What I found is when I spoke about what I'm passionate about, when I spoke about what I'm trying to achieve, people rallied around me. One of the partners at the firm I'm still in touch with to this day, we met up just a couple of months ago. And
mm,
to this day, he's still supporting me in what I'm trying to do. He's even bought one of our products that we've co-created with some of the young people we've taught. So it goes to show that actually people do want to support you when you're doing great things.
yeah,
And unfortunately, it was my mindset that actually probably held me back from talking a lot more about the work that we do. Because I
yeah,
was conscious, that same thing you mentioned there, right? There was this fear of, I'm coming from this career path that seems so clear, you know, the trajectory, you know, kind of salaries you're going to be hitting, to walk away
yeah,
from all of that to potentially not earn any money at all for years at a time before you can get there. But the mission is bigger. The mission is definitely bigger than me and my own personal ego. It's bigger than me and what I would like to achieve for myself. What I'm
mm.
trying to achieve for young people goes beyond just my personal bank.
And talk to me about the soft skills piece, because this, when we spoke
Mm.
first, I was like, tell me about how you've designed the program and why you focus on and why it's structured the way that it is.
I love that. And interestingly, it does link back to the things I learned in consulting. So,
Mm,
in truth, my one skill, one credit I give myself is my ability to articulate myself, have conversations with people, and build a network.
yeah.
I've seen how far that's carried me in my own life, in my own journey, in career. And I want the same for young people. So when I look at some of the soft skills that a digital generation have,
Hmm.
and I think I will share this with you at the time, a lot of their ability to debate and negotiate is done in the comment section of a YouTube channel, right? It's
Yeah.
literally constantly this digital thing, and there's a barrier, there's a wall that seems like you're connecting because it's digitally connected, but you're not.
Yeah.
You're not actually having a face-to-face conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
And I said the same thing of social media and algorithms. You're constantly shown the things that you already agree with, that you already believe
Mm,
in. So that
yeah.
means there's no room for anyone to challenge your belief system where you can have a healthy conversation without it feeling like a personal attack. And
Yeah.
actually, for us, it's I need to be able to break that barrier to build young people to have the social resilience and social emotional learning to be able to carry themselves into different situations, to still know their values are important, to still know their beliefs hold value, but
Mm,
also how to engage in conversations with those completely opposite beliefs. So the entire program builds upon the soft skills that not only helps build their character, but are actually fundamental skills when you go into the world of work, and
yeah.
you learn how to facilitate a conversation and lead others, and it's all of what we do.
And do you see, and I'm just making a mental note to ask you another question. Do you see that
Hmm.
um, young people who come from, less advantaged backgrounds
Hmm.
have less of or less confidence in this area? Because if I think about the young people I know who have
Hmm.
been through the private education system, they're so just like confident. There's an ease and a confidence that I didn't have when I
Yeah.
was that age. I was that constantly feeling defensive
Hmm.
and under attack.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love your insights on that.
Yeah, look, sad truth is the answer is yes. And as much as I love having my conversations, intervening with some of the young people who have come from similar backgrounds and even harsher and harder conditions than I have, the
Mm,
reality is these are the key gaps that consistently show themselves. And it
yeah,
might to somebody who's hiring seem as they can't write an email well or their phone
yeah,
conversation, but actually it's much deeper than that. It's how they actually engage in society and how they are able to convey themselves, and often
mm,
that's lacking. And it's not because they don't have the ability, it's that they haven't been taught the way that often it seems to be
mm,
accepted when it comes to them getting a job. So there
yeah,
is definitely a skills gap as opposed to a capability gap. They just need the skills to get there.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a great way to put it. Um, and tell us about the products that you create, the merch. I had a lot of fun looking at the website. Explain to me why
Thanks.
that part is so important.
I mean, you look at our generation of young people, they are passionate about what they wear and they're
Yeah.
passionate about expressing themselves. And often it's about, well, where is their safe outlet to do that? Other than
Mm,
social media, fashion, clothing has always and will always be a way for young people to express themselves, how
Mm.
they feel their sense of belonging, right? It's Maslow's hierarchies of needs 101, right? They want that sense
Yes.
of belonging.
Yeah.
And fashion just happens to be such a great catalyst for that. Notwithstanding the fact that I've always thought I was somewhat fashionable, and often mocked at my old workplace for trying to be fashionable by truthfully wearing too many tight trousers. That was always the thing that I was laughed at for. I have colleagues who would laugh at me because my trousers are too tight, and I haven't changed it. But
Got
but
to
the
own
truth,
it.
oh, 100%, 100%, I claim it. But yeah, the truth is what we do is we co-create our streetwear products with the young people we teach. So we run a 6-week program where we're actually building on those core soft skills. We call them essential skills, and where they're building their social emotional learning. They're learning how to deal with conflict resolution. They learn how to present and articulate themselves. We do all of that whilst getting them to co-create a piece of streetwear clothing through a live brief. So you get 15, often sometimes strangers, or they might even be friends, 15 young strangers in a room together, co-collaborating on an exciting project where they get
Yeah.
to bring to life streetwear. And
Yeah.
ultimately, we're telling their stories through the clothing. So each of the items are talking about their lived experiences, what they've been through, and we're giving them a voice. We're ultimately giving them a voice to articulate themselves through clothing that they get to love and wear.
And I think there's a lot to be said about that if I sort of think about some of the experiences that I had or people that I know have had,
Mm.
they don't want to talk about, or they've been constantly spoken to by professionals about, if like you have social services involvement in your family and you're constantly
Mm.
being spoken to or judged, or you're not sure if you can say what you want to say.
Yeah.
I think this is like a really fantastic way to express yourself without or on your own terms or to own it.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. And that's the key part for us is there has to be tangible ownership at the end of our programs.
yeah.
And for them to own that piece of streetwear, they get to have that thing delivered to the house. They get to wear it with pride that they co-created that.
Mm,
You can't even imagine what that does in terms of boosting morale and reminding them that
yeah,
they have value, that they have something to add to their portfolio, to their skill set, that they've co-created something, they've brought something to life from scratch. So yeah, there's a lot to say about that. A lot.
and do you think do you get asked about your own, your background? Do you find that,
Mm.
you went to grammar school and uni? Does that ever come up with the young people that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the sessions we run is around identity and stereotypes. And we're ultimately teaching them how to ground their identity, to understand what that means, and to build their self-esteem around things that last, that add value. And
Yeah,
often it does reflect back on, well, what is your journey? What is your story? How did you get to where you are? And it's a
yeah,
fantastic opportunity to use myself as a case study, but actually it's
yeah,
even nicer when I can bring in others from different walks of life and for them to share their story. It
yeah,
is really encouraging. And it's to touch on the point you mentioned earlier, it is refreshing to have someone who sometimes looks young enough to pass as one of them be in the room teaching them. And I mean, minus the balding hair, in the room teaching them and liaising with them, because I sound like them, I look like them, I laugh like them, I interact like them. My slang is the same as their slang. I mean, there's always
yeah,
the new words they come up with that I can't keep up with, but for the most part,
yeah,
it's so relatable, that it just gives a level of calmness when they enter the room.
yeah. I like that. I just said 20 minutes. I've been sitting thinking, what does this green top say about me? I don't know. Uh, um, okay. How do you get firms and individuals involved? So there's obviously the young people that you coach, mentor,
Mm.
work with, support. How how does that work? Bringing in these different groups of people.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's something that it's an active struggle of ours and one that we're trying to build right now. A lot of what we're trying to do is build out not only our volunteering base of other adults who want to pull back and give their time, but also to build corporate relationships with those who want to make a difference for the young people, because we are an organization in the community, work with these young people on such a frequent basis. A
Yeah,
lot of the work I'm doing now, believe it or not, is LinkedIn, it's emailing, it's contacting people, it's getting in
yeah,
touch with one of people like you who share a similar mission and a goal, right? And
yeah.
that ultimately opens doors for us to have the conversations, to see the level of impact that can be had when people do partner with us to do great work. So it's an ongoing battle.
Mm. And where sort of geographically right now,
Mm.
where are you based?
Yeah, so we're kind of spread across South London and East London, just for some of the
Hmm.
programs that we're currently running right now.
Yeah,
Southwark, Lambeth, South London, and then we're also doing work in Lewisham, and then we're also doing work out in East London, like Dalston, Kingsland side. I mean, I don't think we're bound by geographic location. We're really trying to go where the need is. So if there are young people that we can deliver a fantastic program for and make a difference in Essex, we will go to Essex.
yeah.
But as it stands right now, we've been based mostly in South and East London.
And the organisations that support you and work with you outside of people volunteering their time,
Mm.
you know, uh, 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 who are the kind of what are the kind of organisations that are, are they putting cash in? Are they giving you access to facilities? What does that look like, and what do you need?
Great question. A mixture of both, actually, a mixture of both.
Yeah,
So, I mean, we work with universities and charity partners. That might mean co-facilitating or sharing space.
yeah,
Or for example, we're delivering a program where we've won funding or they've won funding and we get to co-create and co-deliver that program with them. For
mhm,
partner organizations, I think what we truthfully need is the ability to be funded to deliver this program.
yeah,
Everything unfortunately costs money. We can't escape it. But what we've tried to do, of course, is create a business model that allows us to put that money directly back into the community, right? So as a social
mm,
enterprise, 65% of what we're doing goes back into our community. So
mm,
yeah, for us, it is about building relationships with people who understand what the work that we do, see the value and the impact that we do, and are therefore
yeah.
willing to fund it so we can go out and do greater work.
So it's awesome. It's just so awesome. Um, what are your hopes for the future? What do you think's next?
Love that. I mean, look, the big vision, what we're really truly working towards is what we call a purpose-built retail store. We want to create a 50-50 store. So 50% of that space is creative workshop space for young people to come in off the streets whenever they want, get creative with us, play a part of our programs, play with some of the digital tools and get creative. And then the other 50% of the room is all of the streetwear clothing that they've actually co-created with us. So we want them to tangibly, physically see all of
Mhm,
their hard work up in walls in the store at all times. So that's what we want to create. We see the decline in community centres. There are not that many spaces for young people to just be. And then
mm,
we'll find the other side of the coin. People are complaining that they're loitering and they're hanging around, but we've not been able to invest in the infrastructure for them to be there. So that's our mission. That's what we're trying to create. Our vision is to create that purpose-built retail store where young people can just be and be themselves and tangibly see their successes up on the walls that are surrounded by them.
mm. And are you scoping anywhere out right now? Is there someone we need to talk to?
Great question. I mean, no, the answer is no, there isn't anywhere we're scoping. We've definitely been having some early conversations about what this could look like,
Yeah,
recycling empty spaces. There are quite a few empty spaces, whether they're retail spaces or otherwise, in
yeah.
London, right? So for us, it really is about, well, if they're not in use, help allow us to help you to recycle those, repurpose them to be something of value to the community. So yeah, if you know anybody who has access to unused venues, areas that we could actually maximize for young people to bring value to their lives, we'd love to have that conversation with them.
Awesome. Well, with through the power of LinkedIn, I'm sure we
Absolutely.
must be able to make this happen.
Yes.
Um, and where can people find you? Where can they find Trash Gang? How can they get in touch?
Great question. I mean, look, website, Instagram, LinkedIn. It's always trash and then gang is Gxng. Not
Mhm.
the typical way to spell gang, but it of course adds an extra flavor of coolness. So yeah, I mean, look, truthfully, our website and Instagram would be the best place. So trash Gxng, you'll be able to find us.
I think I'm going to replace the O in my first name with an X. See if it gives me an
I
extra
love it
level of
already.
coolness.
I love it already.
It's just been, I was so excited to hear about what you're doing.
Yeah,
And I'm so glad that you had the time to come on because I
pleasure.
know you've had well, it's like manic for
Yeah,
you right
busy
now.
week. Yeah.
So thanks, Tayo. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Tony. I really appreciate you giving me the time too.
Thanks.
Pleasure.